pretty song, Anim Zemirot, by Josh Warshawski from his album, Chavarai Nevarech, Friends, Let Us Bless. How's everybody doing? Such a good page tonight. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we gather to do some mystical, provocative, ancient, modern, amazing teachings from our sages tonight? This is really a good one. Who's with us? Yehuda in South Carolina, Melissa in Great Neck, Vaughn in Ohio, John in Sedona, Renee in Indiana, Shandora in the Bronx, Nancy, North Carolina, Brandon. Hi from Knob. Knob? Is that a place? It must be. So hi, Brandon. Karen in Northern California, James in Indian. Aren't you in Knoxville, Brandon? Where are you? Okay. Karen in Northern California, James in Indianapolis, Guy in Ohio, Paul in Chicago, the other Paul in the Great Northwest, Bella in Florida. It is Knoxville. Okay, good. Stephen in Dover, New Hampshire, Lucy in Minnesota, Carrie in Santa Clarita, Larry in Queens, Patrice in Utah, Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey, Gisette in Colorado. Over there on the YouTube side, Lynn in North Texas, Marjorie in Georgia, Aoife in Ocala, Florida, right, Aoife? And Neil in Virginia. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's episode of AT Daily, sponsored by our good friend Mark Wolf. I would like the dedication to be in memory of my beloved mother, Lillian Wolf, Zigrona Lifracha. Her memory always be for a blessing. Her Hebrew name, Leah Bas Yosef Umalka, whose 50th yahrzeit was in this month, on the 3rd of Adar. Mark, you're not that much older than me. If this is your mom's 50th yahrzeit, you must have lost her so young. I'm so sorry, Mark. And what a beautiful dedication to your mom, who just remains such an important part of your life, all of your life. And on this, the 50th anniversary of her passing, she must be so proud of all that you have accomplished in your life and your beautiful family. May her memory always be for a blessing. May our learning today accrue to her merit, her vast merit in the world of souls, and take her even a little higher. And Mark, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. We say amen, and thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. All right. This is such a good page. So we're in chapter 2 of Tractate Chagigah, and we started talking about certain subjects because they could lead to being misconstrued and have major impact, major consequences, because they touch on esoteric, difficult to understand concepts that are not for everybody and whose misinterpretation could lead to lots of damage. So we start learning that certain subjects are only to be taught in very small groups, right? A teacher and 2 students, or a teacher and 1 student at the most. And for the most esoteric of these subjects, even 1 is too many unless that 1 student is already practically at the level of a sage himself or herself. All right, we pick this up at the bottom of page 12 of 11b, continuing our discussion, our Gemara, on Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 2. It is taught in the Mishna, nor the act of creation before 2. Right, so the act of creation, ma'aseh bereshis. So this is trying to understand what God was doing when God created the world. Now, humans cannot fathom the mind of God. Nevertheless, there's certain clues that we can pick up from the Torah, from the account of the creation at the beginning of the book of Genesis, bereshis in Hebrew. And, the way the world is, the sages had quite a bit to say about the work of creation that God did. But this is one of those areas, danger, danger, danger. A sage can only teach this to another sage, basically, maybe two. but they have to be at a very high level. And they're going to talk about some of these teachings that would be transmitted in such a class. But I mean, here we are, we're a group of people, we're reading it. It's not one sage teaching it to another sage. How is this possible? Because so much of what we're going to be learning is really just the tip of the iceberg, veiled references within references. We'll pick up what we can. We are not learning it in the way that the sages would have been learning it when they were discussing the act of creation in the deepest and most profound way. And nevertheless, it'll be fascinating. So it was taught in the Mishna, nor the act of creation before more than two students. And the Gemara poses a question. From where are these matters derived that you can only teach the account of creation, God's act of creation before two? Or you can't even teach it before two, right? You can only teach it to one student at a time. And the Gemara explains, as the sages taught, that the verse states, Deuteronomy 4:32, for ask now of the days past which were before you. Now, this little passage, that's only part of the verse, but Moses is speaking in Deuteronomy, right? His final sermon before he says goodbye to the people. He goes off to die alone because he will not be allowed to enter the promised land, and he'll die on his birthday at the age of 120. And that's why we say to people, may you live to 120, because that is a complete life like Moses led. At any rate, in this last month of his life, he's giving over this incredible sermon that is the Book of Deuteronomy. And after he lists all the blessings that will follow if you follow the law, and all the curses that will befall the people if they stray from the Torah, he sort of summarizes that part of his talk by saying, why wouldn't you listen to me? Why wouldn't you follow the Torah? Are you people crazy? Has anything like this ever happened, that God, the only God, the one God, took a people as his own treasure and brought them out of slavery, from subjugation to another people with great signs and wonders, and gave them a Torah and led them around the wilderness and fed them manna while a whole new generation would arise, who've entirely grown up in the bosom of God, learning Torah? Like, why would you stray from that, right? There has never been in the history of the world a phenomena like this. You must not forget it and just go back to living in the world and doing your own thing and chasing after your evil inclination as humans are wont to do, right? So he says, for ask now of the days past which were before you, and then it will continue. Has anything like this ever happened? But for right now, that's enough. For ask now of the days past which were before you. Since this verse is stated in the singular, right? You is both singular and plural in English, but in Hebrew, we would either address a verb to you singular or you plural, and this one is addressed singular. He's speaking to the whole population, but it is stated in the singular, as if he's talking to each individual. Since this verse is stated in the singular, it teaches that an individual may ask questions with regard to creation, i.e. the days past, but two may not ask, which indicates that one may teach the account of creation, the act of creation, and such matters to only one student at a time. Now, one might have thought that a person may ask questions with regard to matters preceding the creation of the world. Therefore, the continuation of the verse states, since the day that God created man upon the earth, right? Has asked now of the days past, has anyone done anything like this? Since the day that God created man upon the earth. So up until the creation of the humans, you can ask what was going on in sort of prehistoric times, but no further, right? That's the limitation that the sages are putting on our inquiries. And one might have thought that a person may not ask questions with regard to matters that occurred during the 6 days of creation before the creation of man. Therefore, the verse states, for ask now of the days past, which were before you. indicating that one may inquire about the days preceding the creation of man. Now, those 6 days, right? The humans were created on the 6th day, and on the 7th day, God rested. Were those 6 days 24-hour days? First of all, we have no idea. But some say, yeah, exactly. They were 6 24-hour days, and in one 6-day week, God created the world, the heavens, and everything in it, etc. Another theory, expounded beautifully in his book Genesis and the Big Bang by Jerry Schroeder, is particularly because the sun, moon, and stars only appeared on the 4th day, that prior to, so these days, we can't assume that they're 24-hour days as they're measured on Earth and, its revolutions as it revolves around the sun. It must be that those days are measured in some other way. And Jerry posits, like if he ran the math, that if they're logarithmic days, and really what we learn in those 6 days is the sequence of creation. He squares it with Big Bang cosmology like really well. It's kind of amazing how well like the order of creation is laid out in the Bible. And it squares exactly with what science has to say in terms of the history of the earth, when water appeared on the earth, when single cell life appeared, when multicellular life, higher life, vertebrates, mammals, etc. All kind of appeared in the same order, more or less, that they're stated in the Bible. And so what Jerry is saying is like the first day was several billion years, and the second day was several billion years, and it gets and it gets smaller and smaller. And mankind, humans appear very late, like just before Shabbos in that week. At any rate, that's beyond the scope of today's class. But what is being said right here is people, the sages are saying you're going to get into esoteric, mystical, explorations that could really get you into trouble if you try to explore and ask and philosophize and theorize about what existed before the physical universe was created, right? But you can go back into those 6 days and ponder what was going on during the 6 days that are mentioned in the Bible, and the length of those 6 days, how much time that really was before the humans appeared. Was it 6 times 24 hours, or was it billions of years? That kind of inquiry is permitted. What you can't ask is before there was a physical universe, because now you're trying to imagine something that is absolutely beyond the imagination of the human. In fact, physicists would say that time and space didn't exist until there was a Big Bang. And that actually squares quite well with Jewish mysticism, right? That before this physical world came into being, what was before was God's infinity, sometimes referred to as endless light or Ein Sof. But what the nature of that is, beyond our comprehension. Okay, so one might have thought that a person, so now that you're saying you can ask questions about what transpired during the 6 days before the humans were created, so that's permitted. So then one might have thought that a person may ask questions with regard to what is above and what is below, what was before and what is after the world, outside the physical universe. Before or after it. After is interesting. After presupposes that the physical universe will end. So therefore, the same verse states, from one end of the heavens to the other. You ask yourself, ask of the days past, has anything like this ever happened? From one end of the heavens to the other, which is explained as follows. With regard to that which is from one end of the heavens to the other, i.e. within the boundaries of the world, that you may ask. But you may not ask what is above, what is below, what was before, and what is after. The Gemara poses a question. Now we're on 12a. Now that it is derived from the phrase, from one end of the heavens to the other, why do I need the phrase, since the day that God created man upon the earth? Why do we need that phrase? We're already saying, well, we can ask what happened before the humans were created. So then why do we need since the day that God created man upon the earth? And the Gemara answers that this phrase is teaching us something else. And it is something according to Rabbi Elazar. As Rabbi Elazar said, the height of Adam, the first man, reached from the ground to the skies, as it is stated, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and from one end of the heavens. Deuteronomy 4:32. So when he sinned, the Holy One, blessed be he, placed his hand upon him, and obviously it was both of them, Adam and Eve, but placed his hand upon him and diminished him, as it is stated in Psalm 139, verse 5, you fashioned me behind and before and laid your hand upon me. Now, I have a note here from Rav Steinsaltz. We're not meant to understand that the original humans that walked on earth, Adam and Eve, were 50 miles tall. I mean, they would really have a tough time getting around in the world if they were 50 miles tall. That's just if they reached from, the surface of the earth up to space. But heaven, whatever is meant by heaven, it could actually be much, much further than that. So what are you talking about? That the humans were, miles and miles, maybe hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles, maybe millions of miles. In fact, the measure is going to be even greater than that. How are we to understand this? Not that they were physically that size, but rather that human comprehension, human understanding, the human senses were able to perceive so much more. We're still nothing alongside God, but alongside what we ended up being, mortals that live, maybe 100 years type of thing, we are so diminished now. We used to be heavenly creatures, right? Like incredible creatures, capable of conversing, with God about much, much greater topics, greater wonders than we could ever conceive now. The original, human form before, when we occupied paradise, right? The Garden of Eden, again, not necessarily a physical place in this world. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But we were just, we were just much higher order beings. But we were dangerous, right? The angels were not created with free will. So they are incredible heavenly creatures, but they can be counted on to do whatever God says. The humans were created with free will, and if you put a free will in a creature with that kind of expansive understanding and ability, it was too dangerous to, the upper world. And so God said, no, we're gonna let these humans develop for a long time, and then maybe they can resume their original form. But until such time, they're going to be much more limited type creatures, the humans that you and I are. Right. So Rav Yehuda said that Rav said the size of Adam, the first man, was from one end of the world to the other. As it is stated, since the day that God created man upon the earth and from one end of the heavens to the other, which indicates that Adam spanned the entire length of the world. Whether world means earth or galaxy or universe, we can't understand these terms because we're just limited to physical time and space. God is not limited in that way, and perhaps Adam and Eve were not limited. The original versions of Adam and Eve were not limited in that way either. So once he sinned, however, the Holy One, blessed be he, placed his hand upon Adam and diminished him, as it states, and laid your hand upon me. The Gemara asks, well, if so, the two parts of the verse contradict each other, since one indicates that his height reached the heavens, while the other says it reached the end of the earth. And the Gemara answers both this and that are one, meaning the same measure. He reached from the earth to the heavens. The Gemara continues to discuss creation in this kind of, veiled and elliptical manner. The Gemara continues. Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, 10 things were created on the first day of creation. right? So what do we read in the Bible? In the beginning of God's creating of the heaven and the earth, God said, let there be light, and there was light, right? So the first thing God made was light. That's what it says in the Bible, right? And he separated the dark from the light, and the light he called day, and the darkness he called night. It was one day. Something like that. So here, Rav Yehuda says that Rav said 10 things were created on the first day of creation. And they are as follows. Heaven and earth, tohu and vohu, i.e. the unformed and void, light and darkness, wind and water, and the length of day and the length of night. How do we know? All these are derived from the Torah. Heaven and earth, as it is written, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Sometimes translated as in the beginning of God's creating the heaven and the earth. Tohu and vohu, as it is written, Genesis 1:2, and the earth was unformed and void. Tohu vohu, sometimes called chaos. Light and darkness. Darkness, as it is written, also in Genesis 1:2, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Light, as it is written, and God said, let there be light. That's Genesis 1:3. Wind and water, as it is written, and the wind of God, also the Spirit of God is how it's usually translated, but that word is ruach. Sometimes wind, sometimes spirit. Where am I? And the wind of God hovered over the face of the waters. And the length of day and the length of night, as it is written, and there was evening and there was morning, one day. Genesis 1:5. It was taught in the Tosefta, tohu, right? This unformed, this adjective that means unformed, or this noun that means this unformed something, place, potential, a setting. We don't know. But about it, says it was taught in the Tosefta, tohu is a green line that encompasses the entire world, and from which darkness emerges. As it is stated, Psalm 18, verse 12, he made darkness his hiding place round about him, indicating that a line of darkness surrounds the world. Vohu, right? Tohu vavohu. What is vohu? These are damp stones submerged in the depths, from which water emerges. As it is stated, and he shall stretch over it the line of tohu and stones of vohu. So that's in Isaiah 34:11, which demonstrates that tohu is a line and that vohu is referring to stones. And the Gemara poses a question. And was light created on the first day? But isn't it written, and God set them in the firmament of heaven? That's Genesis 1:17. That's talking about much later in the creation when he's talking about the lights, the great lights in heaven, the sun, the moon, and the stars. And God set them in the firmament of heaven, right, the sky. And it is also written, and there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. So it would seem like he created the lights, right, on the fourth day. And the Gemara answers, this should be understood in accordance with Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, the light that the Holy One, blessed be he, created on the first day was not that of the sun, but a different kind of light, through which man could observe from one end of the world to the other. What does that mean? Right, so this is when we're talking about Ein Sof, right? That endless light, which had the potential in it. It was, it's sort of like, we're not saying that God is light. We're not saying that endless light is God. We can't fathom what God is. But this universe was created within a space that God, this is sort of the Arizal, right? So much more modern Kabbalistic thinking from the 1500s. But that God made a tzimtzum, made a space within that endless light where he would create this physical universe. Why? So that there could be creatures with free will in it. Why does he has to do this? Because there would be no free will if we were constantly exposed to the presence of God. So God created a place. It's the ultimate magic trick, right? God created a place where the being who gives life to the whole universe, God's self, would be hidden, right? It's unbelievable to create a place that's constantly sustained by God, but where God's presence would somehow hidden, where God's very existence would be hidden. That was the amazing thing that God did by carving out this space within himself so that we could exist. So the light that was created, and this is where the Arizal, right, Rabbi Isaac Luria gets this idea. There was a tzimtzum, a contraction within God, a space that, where God would be hidden. And then God made a vessel, to contain the universe. And then God shone God's light into it. That's this light that we're talking about. But that light, even this a light where God's own presence would be hidden, but it's still the light of God. It was just too powerful for the vessel, shattered it, and we live in this broken world where God's light is sort of trapped in these holy sparks that are each surrounded by kind of husks of unholiness. And our job, our mission in this world is to release the sparks of holy light. How do we do that? By doing God's will, by fulfilling our obligations, by doing the commandments, by showing compassion and kindness to others, right? By making God kavel, like a parent, right? Like when you have two children and one of them, takes care of the other and just acts like a real mensch, sweet, compassionate, we just melt inside. When we give that feeling to God because we behave like the humans have the potential to behave, that's when we release those sparks of holiness. Okay, but let's just stick to the text that's here. I'm getting a little carried away. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar said, the light that the Holy One, blessed be He, created on the first day was not that of the sun, but of a different kind of light through which man could observe from one end of the world to the other. But when the Holy One, blessed be He, looked upon the generation of the flood and the generation of the dispersion, and saw that their ways were corrupt, and that they might misuse this light for evil, He arose and concealed it from them, as it is stated, and from the wicked their light is withheld. Fascinating thing about that teaching is that until the time of Noah, the generation of the flood, that light was still available. People were walking around on earth, gardens, trees, mountains, deserts, oceans, but also illuminated by this light through which you could see from one end of the world to the other. I would posit that they were living in a kind of waking dream, right? That in the same way that in our dreams, like we're not subject to the laws of physics. You might start flying. You might be in a room that suddenly kind of morphs into another place and time. And everything is much more supple, like reality, much more supple. Reality could just change, and just not obey reality, a reality that is not static like our reality. In the place where we live now, this phone is a phone, it stays a phone. I mean, if I hit it with a hammer, it'll break. But it's not just going to melt in my hand because I would like it to. It's not going to become some kind of Salvador Dali thing. If you're science fiction minded or creative minded or mystical minded, you could start to imagine a world that is much more dreamlike, right? And where people can experience, things that we can only dream of. And that's why you have in those, just hinted at in the very early chapters of the Bible, that there was mating between, angel-like creatures and the daughters of man, and it produced the giants and heroes, people living for 1,000 years. I mean, it's just a totally different kind of existence. But eventually, God said, yeah, you can't, you're not going to be able to be like Adam and Eve, totally angel-like creatures, and you're not even going to be able to be like enhanced humans. You're just going to be human, ordinary humans. Otherwise, too dangerous, too much trouble that you all can get into. Let's continue. And for whom did he conceal it, right? This light that he created at the beginning and finally decided that it's just, it cannot be shown to the humans, so it was concealed, right? Says Rabbi Lazar, it was concealed from this line in Job, and from the wicked their light is withheld. That light is withheld. Okay, so the light wasn't destroyed, it was concealed. So now the Gemara asks, and for whom did God conceal it? For the righteous people in the future. As it is stated, Genesis 1:4, and God saw the light, that it was good. And good is referring to none other than the righteous. As it is stated, say of the righteous that it shall be good for them, for they shall eat the fruit of their actions. So this light that God concealed from us walking around on earth, perhaps when you get to dwell in that light again, is if you're one of the righteous who has a place in the world to come. Maybe you dwell in that light when we return to the world of souls. Maybe it's going to be withheld until the end of time, meaning the world to come after the Messiah comes and this whole world is transformed into something of a much higher order, maybe much more like the world that Adam and Eve inhabited. And by the way, I'm just, I'm telling you when I'm reading, and then when I'm not reading, it's just Sal, right? I've learned this stuff over the years from various sources, but for now, you should just, assume that anything that I'm saying is just Sal, no authority whatsoever. This is just, I have some authority for where I've learned this, various studies in Kabbalah, etc. But for now, let's just assume that this has no authority. It's just Sal postulating, and there's no reason for you to believe or run with anything that I'm saying other than that it's something interesting to think about for today. Right? Now I'm reading. Okay, so when the light saw that it had been concealed for the righteous, it rejoiced. The light rejoiced, as it is stated. The light for the righteous shall rejoice. Proverbs 13:9. Now the Gemara comments, this is like a dispute between Tanaim, the rabbis of the Mishna. The light that the Holy One, blessed be He, created on the first day was so profound that man could observe through it from one end of the world to the other. This is the statement of Rabbi Yaakov. And the rabbis say, this light is the very same as the lights created on the first day, but they were not suspended in their designated places in the firmament until the fourth day. The rabbis are saying, all right, don't be so mystical. Don't be so crazy. The light that God created on the first day, it's not some extraordinary, supernatural, esoteric, mystical light. Which if one could access it would give him vision throughout the universe. Rather, it's just light, the way we understand light on the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's the same light that would shine from the sun and be reflected by the moon. But the source of that light was not revealed on earth until the sun and the moon were hung in the sky on the fourth day of creation. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said that Rav said, the world was created through 10 attributes. This sounds a little bit like Kabbalah, but it's not the same list of the 10 sephiros, the 10 attributes, which are like sort of channels through which God's energy comes into the world in sort of basic Hasidus and Kabbalah. This is a different set of 10 attributes. The number 10 is kind of a source for both of these thought systems. That God created the world through 10 utterances. If you count how many times God says, let there be light, let there be trees yielding fruit, let there be birds in the sky, etc. There's 10 of those utterances. Those are the utterances through which God creates this world. And it must be that, 10 things happened as he was making those utterances. So Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia said that Rav said, the world was created through 10 attributes, through wisdom, through understanding, through knowledge, through strength, through rebuke, through might, through righteousness, through justice, through kindness, and through mercy. right? So those are the attributes of God that we can sort of understand, and we can fathom a little bit, kind of like emotional characteristics, great qualities that God has. And it was through this, his knowledge, his understanding, his wisdom, his strength, his rebuke, etc., that he created our world. Scriptural proof is provided for this statement as follows. It was created through wisdom and through understanding. As it is written, Proverbs 3:19, the Lord founded earth with wisdom and established the heavens with understanding. The attribute of knowledge, as it is written, with his knowledge the depths were broken up. That's Proverbs 3:20. The attribute of strength and might, the attributes of strength and might, as it is written, Psalm 65 verse 7, who by your strength sets fast the mountains, who is girded about with might. Through rebuke, right? God's attribute of rebuking, of educating his creatures, as it is written in Job 26:11, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his rebuke. The attributes of righteousness and justice, as it is written, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne, Psalm 89:15. And the attributes of kindness and mercy, as it is written, remember your mercies, O Lord, and your kindnesses, for they are from times of old. They are the original qualities of God that were always available in this world. Mercies and his mercies and kindnesses. And Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, with regard to the same matter, when the Holy One, blessed be he, created the world, it continued to expand like two balls of a warp, whose cord lengthens as they unravel, kind of a knitting analogy, until the Holy One, blessed be he, rebuked it and made it stand still, as it is stated, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his rebuke. Here's the idea that God knew when to quit, right? Like we posit to the extent that scientists posit Big Bang cosmology, there was a Big Bang, and the universe started expanding from that point and has been expanding ever since. I believe there's also some cosmologists who say that that is finite, that the sort of gravitational pull of all the galaxies, etc., the billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of stars, will eventually make the universe contract again. Here's this same idea from our sages 2,000 years ago, that it's like God put the universe into existence and it was expanding and would have kept expanding, but God said, enough, it's big enough. No need to keep going, heavens and earth. It's big enough, right? So God said, enough, die. Like the same word as dayenu. It would have been enough for us. Die in Hebrew is enough, die. And this is the same as that which Reish Lakish said. What is the meaning of that which is written? I am the Almighty God, El Shaddai, right? Genesis 17:1, God calls himself El Shaddai. We translate that as the Almighty God. But that word Shaddai has die in it. Enough, right? The Hebrew word for enough. It means I am he who said to the world, enough, die, instructing it to stop expanding. Similarly, Reish Lakish said, when the Holy One, blessed be he, created the sea, it continued to expand until the Holy One, blessed be he, rebuked it and made it dry. As it is stated, he rebukes the sea and makes it dry and desiccates all the rivers. Nahum 1:4. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel dispute the order of creation, as the sages taught. Beis Shammai, the Academy of Shammai, the students of Shammai say the heavens were created first, and afterward the earth was created. As it is stated, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, which indicates that heaven came first. And Beis Hillel say the earth was created first and heaven after it, as it is stated, Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, on the day that the Lord made earth and heaven. So which is it? Did God make heaven and then earth, or did he make earth and then heaven? So Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, according to your words, does a person build a second floor and then build the first floor of the house afterward? As it is stated, it is he who builds his upper chambers in the heaven and has founded his vault upon the earth. So according to Beis Hillel, it must be that he built the earth first and then made the heavens above it. Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, well, according to your words, does a person make a stool for his feet and then he makes the seat afterward? As it is stated, so said the Lord, the heavens are my seat and the earth my footstool. Isaiah 66:1. But the rabbis say, so the later sages after Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, the rabbis say, both this and that were created as one. For it is stated, Isaiah 48:13, indeed, my hand has laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand has spread out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand up together. That makes a lot more sense. The rabbis are pretty sensible here. The heavens and the earth were all created together. What do you mean one was created before the other? God had a vision. Heavens and earth, they would work together symbiotically. So, of course, they were created at the same time. And the Gemara asks, and the others, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, what in their opinion is the meaning of together in this verse from Isaiah? The Gemara responds, it means that they do not separate from each other. Maybe they work together, doesn't mean they were created at the same time. And the Gemara comments, in any case, the verses contradict each other, as heaven is sometimes mentioned first, and in other places in the Bible, earth is listed first. And why is that? And Reish Lakish said, when they were created, he first created the heavens, and afterward created the earth. But when he spread them out and fixed them in their places, he spread out the earth, and afterward he spread out the heavens. It's almost like an artist who's going to, put up a sculpture in a public place. First, in his studio, he creates all the parts of the sculpture, and maybe he, creates the heavens first and then the earth. But then when he takes it out in the public place, he puts the base down first and then the upper part on top of it, right? He built them in one order and he assembled them in another. Oops. Okay. Incidental to the above, the Gemara asks, what is the meaning and source of the word Shamayim, heaven, right? When we talk about the heaven and the earth, so the earth is Eretz and the heaven, Shamayim. So now let's look at this word Shamayim, heaven. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina said, it's actually an acronym. It's a shortening of two words, Shesham Mayim, meaning the water is there. Shesham Mayim, the water is there. It was taught in a baraisa. Shamayim means Eish Umayim, fire and water, right? Eish, fire, Mayim, water. So Shamayim actually means fire and water, which teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, brought them both and combined them together and made the firmament from them, right? The sky is composed of fire and water. Not totally inaccurate, even according to modern science. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Akiva a question when they were walking along the way. And when I say not entirely inaccurate according to modern science, what am I saying? That the Bible is not accurate and science is accurate? No. What I'm saying is that they square with each other surprisingly well. Generally speaking, science is tasked with answering, sort of concrete physical questions about the way the world works so that we can construct new, technologies, medicines, etc. And the realm of religion, metaphysics, Torah, etc., is asking questions about why are we, who are we, how shall we live. They're sort of addressing different things. Generally speaking, this is Maimonides, if you find a contradiction or a conflict between science and religion, probably it's because you are misunderstanding one or both of those realms. There should not be any contradiction between science and religion. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Yishmael asked Rabbi Akiva a question when they were walking along the way. And he said to him, you who served Nachum of Gamzu, right? Nachum of Gamzu, the one who said this too is for the best about everything. You who served Nachum of Gamzu for 22 years, who would expand and learn that every appearance of the word es in the Torah is meant to teach something, what would he expound from the phrase es shamayim ve'es haaretz? Meaning, The first line of the Bible, which we say all the time, say it every day as we wrap our tefillin, because there's 7 words in it, right? We say bereshis. Now I can't even. Bereshit, in the beginning of God's creation of the heaven and the earth, and we say bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, right? So in the beginning of God's creating of the earth, and of the heaven and of the earth. Now, es doesn't mean of or the. Es doesn't mean anything. But the way that Hebrew is constructed is that when you have a subject, a verb, and an object, you stick this word es or et, depending on your pronunciation, but aleph tes, aleph taf, between the verb and the object. And that's how you know that you have a verb-object combination. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just syntactically, the syntax requires that little connection word. Okay, but what we're saying here is that Rabbi Akiva's teacher would actually find a meaning every time that little connector word is used. So he's asking, well, what's it mean at the very beginning of the Torah? Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. In the beginning of God's creating the heaven and the earth, why is that connector word in there before heaven and before earth? Okay, let's see what he says. What would he expound from the phrase the heaven and the earth? Es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. And Rabbi Akiva answered, these words should be expounded as follows. This is what I learned from my teacher, Nachum Mishgamzu. Had it stated, in the beginning, God created Hashamayim ve'haaretz, without the little S connector, et connector, then I would have said Shamayim, the word for heaven, is actually a name of God, blessed be, the Holy One, blessed be He. And the same goes for Aretz. The verse would sound as if it meant that God, whose name is heaven and earth, created the world. Right, because the way that Hebrew works, and that we often put the subject after the verb, etc., that if it did not have that connector word, it would have sounded like God, whose name is heaven and earth, created the world. By having that little connector word in there, you know that in the beginning of His creation, God created heaven and God created earth. So, why do I need and the earth to teach that heaven preceded earth in the order of creation? No, sorry. Why do I need and the earth? Why couldn't it just have said God created the world, right? Or God created, I'm not sure what he's asking here, but it says, okay, why do I need and the earth? Why do I need that? To teach that heaven preceded earth in the order of creation. The next verse states, and the earth was unformed and void, Genesis 1:2. And the Gemara asks, now we're on the B side of 12. And the Gemara asks, after all, the Bible began with heaven first. So what is different about the second verse? Why does the Bible recount the creation of the earth first in the second? It said God created the heavens and the earth. So when God created the heaven, He did blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't say that. It says God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was unformed and void. So why does it go into detail on the second thing that was created before it talks about the first? Why does the Bible recount the creation of earth first in the second verse? And the sage of the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, this can be explained by a parable of a flesh and blood king who said to his servants, rise early and come to my entrance. And he arose and found women and men waiting for him. Whom does he praise? The women or the men? A king told everyone to come to the palace super early. Get up at dawn and come to the palace. So women and men come to the palace. Which group does he lavish his praise on? Those who are unaccustomed to rising early, but yet they rose early anyway because he ordered them to follow his orders. And who is that? The women. So according to this, why does the earth get more details than heaven? Because the earth is a much lower order than heaven, but it's following God's commands, so the Torah is going to pay more attention to it. In the same way, according to this analogy, that women don't get up as early in the morning as men do. Now that's funny because I think we all know, especially in a patriarchal society like this was, that for sure the women are tasked with the children, and most families still are, because the children will naturally run to their mom before they run to their dad, right? So women are certainly getting up early in the morning. What are you talking about? That women get up late? No, they get up as soon as the kids get up. What we're seeing is, but the men, at least the ones that the sages were talking about, the proper way for a man to live is he should be getting up before dawn and starting his Torah study. And if he does that, it's not like you should give him a whole lot of honor for being such a diligent Torah student. That's simply what's expected of him, right? So just shows how lazy we are compared to the standards set by the sages. So it is taught in a bereshis. Rabbi Yosef says, "Woe to them, the creations, who see and know not what they see, who stand and know not upon what they stand." And he clarifies, upon what does the earth stand? Upon pillars. As it is stated, who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble? Job 9:6. These pillars are positioned upon water, as it is stated, to him who spread forth the earth over the waters. Psalm 136. These waters stand upon mountains. As it is stated, the waters stood above the mountains. Psalm 104. The mountains are upon the wind. As it is stated, for behold, he forms the mountains and creates the wind. From Amos 4:13. The wind is upon a storm. As it is stated, stormy wind fulfilling his word. Psalm 148. And the storm hangs upon the arm of the Holy One. Blessed be he. As it is stated, and underneath are the everlasting arms, Deuteronomy 33:27, which demonstrates that the entire world rests upon the arms of the Holy One. This is all to be understood metaphorically, in the sense that we can't really understand, what is holding up the world. Now, our simple minds are like, what are you talking about holding up the world? The earth is round. If you go down beneath the surface of the earth, you're going to find the mantle and the magma and eventually the core. That's just thinking three-dimensionally. God is way beyond 3 dimensions, right? So what they're asking is, what is giving sustenance? What is giving life? What enables this world to keep existing? That's what I like to imagine. The best way to understand the kind of question that they're asking is, when you're dreaming, okay, so there's all these creatures walking around in your dream, and as soon as you wake up, they vanish, right? You're giving life to any beings who happen to populate your dream. Yeah, our world is no less ephemeral than that. Were God to say, enough, I've had enough of this dream, we'd all vanish, right? So he sustains us without revealing his presence to us, and how, from his place of infinity, which would just overwhelm everything here, there's these kinds of layers of the infinite becoming more and more finite, more and more static, until you reach the world that we're used to. And kind of these iterations of it, or these levels of creation, as it were, operating in other dimensions, is kind of what they're hinting at. And you see why this stuff is so difficult. And if we really had access to the tradition, it would be because we're already operating at a very high level of Torah scholarship, and it would be one-on-one with a super experienced scholar. We're just not at that level. That's why we're just, stumbling our way through this text. Okay. And the rabbis say the earth stands on 12 pillars. As it is stated, he set the borders of the nations according to the number of the children of Israel. Deuteronomy 32:8. Just as the children of Israel, meaning the sons of Jacob, are 12 in number, so does the world rest on 12 pillars. And some say there are 7 pillars. As it is stated, she has hewn out her 7 pillars. Proverbs 9:1. Rabbi Elazar ben Shammai says the earth rests on 1 pillar, and the righteous person is its name. As it is stated, but a righteous person is the foundation of the world. We've seen this teaching elsewhere. The reason that God isn't fed up with all our evil and the evil that men do and the wickedness and all the crap that we produce in this world, the way we make each other suffer, why doesn't he just blink it all out of existence? Because there's a few righteous people here, and for them it's worth it to keep the earth going. Rabbi Yehuda said there are two firmaments, the sky. As it is stated, behold, to the Lord your God belongs the heaven and the heaven of heavens. And Deuteronomy 10:14, indicating that there is a heaven above our heaven. Reish Lakish said there are 7 firmaments, and they are as follows: Vilon, Rakia, Shechakim, Zevul, Ma'on, Machon, and Aravot. The Gemara explains the role of each of these firmaments. Vilon, curtain, is the firmament that does not contain anything, but enters at morning and departs in the evening, and renews the act of creation daily, as it is stated, who stretches out the heavens as a curtain, Vilon, and spreads them out as a tent to dwell in. This is that idea that God renews the creation every day. God continues to permit us to exist actively. Rakia, firmament, is the one in which the sun, the moon, the stars, and the zodiac signs, the constellations, are fixed, as it is stated, and God set them in the firmament, in the rakia of the heaven. Shachakim, the heights. This is the one in which mills stand and grind manna for the righteous, as it is stated, and he commanded the heights, Shachakim, above, and opened the doors of heaven, and he caused manna to rain upon them for food, and gave them of the corn of heaven. Psalm 78. Zevul, abode, is the location of the heavenly Jerusalem and the heavenly temple, and there the heavenly altar is built, and the angel Michael, the great minister, stands and sacrifices an offering upon it, as it is stated, I have surely built a house of Zevul for you, a place for you to dwell forever. 1 Kings 8:13. And from where do we derive that Zevul is called heaven? As it is written, look down from heaven and see from your holy and glorious abode, Zevul. Ma'on, habitation, is where there are groups of ministering angels who recite song at night and are silent during the day out of respect for Israel, in order not to compete with the songs of Israel. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his kindness, and in the night his song is with me, indicating that the song of the angels is with God only by night. And with regard to this verse, Reish Lakish said, whoever occupies himself with Torah at night, the Holy One, blessed be he, extends a thread of kindness over him by day. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his kindness. And what is the reason that by day the Lord will command his kindness? Because, and in the night his song, i.e. the song of Torah, is with me. And some say that Reish Lakish said, whoever occupies himself with Torah in this world, which is comparable to night, the Holy One, blessed be he, extends a thread of kindness over him in the world to come, which is comparable to day. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his kindness, and in the night his song is with me. With regard to the same matter, Rabbi Levi said, anyone who pauses from words of Torah to occupy himself with mundane conversation, he will be fed with the coals of the broom tree. As it is stated, they pluck saltwort with wormwood, and the roots of the broom tree are their food. Job 30, verse 4. The exposition is as follows. Those who pluck, i.e. pause from learning Torah, which was given upon 2 tablets, luchot, which sounds similar to maluach, for the purpose of siach, idle chatter, they are punished by having to eat coals made from the roots of the broom tree. And from where do we derive that Ma'on is called heaven? As it is stated, look forth from your holy Ma'on, your abode from heaven. Machon, dwelling place, is where there are storehouses of snow and storehouses of hail, and the upper chamber of harmful dews, like dew that rests on the grass in the morning, and the upper chamber of drops, and the room of tempests and storms, and the cave of mist. And the doors of all these are made of fire. How do we know that there are storehouses for evil things? For it is stated, the Lord will open for you his good storehouse, the heavens, which indicates the existence of a storehouse that contains the opposite of good. I'm almost done. So if you've got questions or comments, get them in. The Gemara asks a question with regard to these things listed above. Are they all located in heaven? It is obvious that they are located on earth. As it is written, praise the Lord from the earth, the sea monsters in all depths, fire and hail, snow and mist, stormy wind, fulfilling his word. We read that every morning. Psalm 148. The verse seems to indicate that all these things are found on the earth. Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav said, King David, requested mercy with regard to them, that they should not remain in heaven, and God brought them down to earth. And he said before him, David said before God, Master of the universe, you are not a God that has pleasure in wickedness. Evil shall not sojourn with you. Psalm 5:5. In other words, you are righteous, O Lord. Nothing evil should sojourn in your vicinity. Rather, it is better that these evil things that are destructive should remain close to us in our world. And from where do we derive that this place is called heaven? As it is written, and you shall hear in heaven the machon of your dwelling. 1 Kings 8:39. And finally, Aravot, skies, is the firmament that contains righteousness, justice, righteousness, i.e. charity, the treasures of life, the treasures of peace, the treasures of blessing, the souls of the righteous, the spirits and souls that are to be created, and the dew that the Holy One, blessed be He, will use to revive the dead at the coming of the Messiah and the resurrection of the dead. And the Gemara proves this statement. Righteousness and justice are found in heaven. As it is written, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Psalm 89. Righteousness, as it is written, and he donned righteousness as armor. Isaiah 59:17. The treasuries of life are found in heaven, as it is written, for with you is the source of life. Psalm 36. The treasuries of peace are found in heaven, as it is written, and he called him the Lord of peace. Judges 6:24, implying that peace is God's name and therefore found close to him. And the treasuries of blessing, as it is written, he shall receive a blessing from the Lord. Blessing descends from heaven. Whew! I mean, such a page. Honestly, I could spend a year teaching that page. We could bring in so many sources. It would be such a great class, but we would have to be one-on-one. We couldn't do it like this, and I'm not qualified to teach such a class. So I would love to take such a class with a wonderful sage, and hopefully he would find me experienced enough to even, qualify to be a student. But that is not what we're about here. So this was an amazing page. And actually, we're not done with these subjects. Tomorrow, more. Baruch Hashem. All right, questions or comments? I know we're already over an hour, so there won't be a lot of questions or comments. Sharon, the et, or S in Ashkenaz, in the Hebrew of bereshis makes each heaven and earth uniquely specific. Could that be the reason that the rabbis reflected on the heavens and the earth linguistically? Right. So they gave one explanation that if there's that the word et wasn't repeated twice in that first verse, you might think that God's name is heaven and earth. A different one that you're, I think, mentioning is the idea that heaven and earth are distinct from each other. It's not some kind of a continuum, and God made each separately. And I think that would lead to the debate that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai were having on the subject. Good point. Vaughn, just my personal opinion. It was literally 24-hour days, only because a day does not require a sun or star. A day is simply one rotation of the Earth's axis. Sharon answered, but the day is measured by our relative position to the sun and moon with the rotation. Vaughn, not really. The Earth's speed is different at the poles and at the equator. Only time measurement that requires a star is a year. One rotation around the star. But it's all very interesting. And Sharon, but day 4 of the creation identifies the sun and moon as demarcating the day and the night. Rotation gives us a time frame, but not a beginning and end, morning and night. Bill, one of the reasons that cosmologists have such big debates over whether the expansion is infinite or finite is because the universe is full of very weird things. And there's something called the Great Attractor. It's a spot that all the various celestial objects in its region, we're talking about whole galaxies here, are headed towards it against the flow of expansion. And the problem is we can't see anything there, so the whole thing is just confusing. right, an attractor, it might be gravitational, it might be something else, right? Who knows, right? I mean, once you get into these subjects, this is why they can become such dangerous subjects, right? Before I started learning at all, when I was young and just fascinated by these kinds of subjects but had no background from our sages, I used to think, well, what if people die and the soul is kind of an energy field that does not feel the pull of gravitation? And so like the soul just drifts away from the body and isn't able to communicate with people anymore, right? It's untethered from the human body. And this could be like a very scary time for the soul where it's just alone, right? It doesn't have eyes to see anymore. It can just think, and it's by itself. And it could encounter the terror of, oh my God, is this it? Is this what the afterlife is? Just me alone forever? That would be awful. But eventually, perhaps that soul would be drawn to one of these great attractors, which would be a community of souls where they become so proximate to each other that they can start communicating, right? And there might be an interim. This is not from any Jewish sources. It's just a crazy thought I had when I was young. But the sages, they're not just having crazy thoughts. Everything that they've mentioned here is rooted either in scripture or a tradition. It would be great if we were having a class in mysticism. Today was just a taste of Talmudic mysticism, Merkava mysticism. Okay, my friends, wow, what a day. And there is more on this subject to come tomorrow, so you definitely want to tune in at our regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific,